Assalamualaikum, my name is Nurul Wadina. So basically in this video I'll be talking about social stratification. Social stratification is a system by which society categorizes people and ranks them in a hierarchy. Everything from social status, prestige, esteem, life chances, as well as poverty line are affected by social stratification. But how does social stratification affect of one's prestige and esteem? It is because social stratification causes social disparity and many problems, as it is an unjust system with monopoly of power and wealth in a particular group. In this video, I'll be talking about the differences between the older generation and the younger generation based on my experience and also based on my interviews experiences in accordance with social stratification concepts. And with that, let's take a look at the subject's personal details first. The first concept I'll be talking about is class consciousness. Give you an example for it. As for example, you're walking down the street and then you see people playing with a phone, and the phone is an iPhone. And you will probably assume that she is or he is a rich person, right? Turns out it's right. They're waiting for a Mercedes-Benz to pick them up. Yes, this is what we call it as class consciousness. So basically, as we all know, my interviewee was born in the 60s and she basically grew up throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s and so on. So she basically stated the differences back then that she felt back then in the 70s. She still remember the fact that those who have televisions and also own cars and lorries and the transportations, vehicles, are rich people. And she was really she basically told me that the one who own cars and televisions are only rich people in her village, when in fact it's totally different now in 2021, because we can literally see majority of the citizens owns cars, lorries, any vehicles and also televisions. Why? This is because of the modernization. I would pretty much say due to the modernization, we basically in 2021 we actually think that television and also cars are essentials that we really need to have in order to keep up with the era of globalization, right? So I would say the difference between these two eras is how people measure the richness of one, because as for example, back in the 60s and 70s and 80s as well, those people who want to measure of one's richness, they usually would take a look at their car, and as for example, if they see a car and the owner, they'll probably, oh, that means he's a rich person and that's it. But now it's different, because as for example, if I just buy a car and my friend would be like, oh, what is the brand and is it the latest edition? Instead, they'll be asking more questions related to brands and so on, because because we're going through the changes and we can literally see the differences between these two eras, that the way people measure the richness of people is different. Next one is life chances. When it comes to life chances, it is quite interesting because there are so many things that I would like to explain, but I think I'm going to pick this specific one in order for me to give a clear picture of the concept itself. So when it comes to life chances, it's all about the chances that you get to your life, and I would say back in the 70s and 80s and now it is completely different, because I would say millennials and people who live in this era are so advantageous. We literally received so many subsidies from the authority, which known as government. But then in the 80s there was no such thing as bantuan prihatnya rakyat and so on, because now I do think that we have received quite a lot of subsidies from the authority and the government in order to take care of our welfare. On top of that, in terms of studying, I do still remember that one time when the interviewer told me that during her days she did not have any chance to pursue her studies because she cannot pursue her studies because of lack of money, and during that time it requires a lot of money to buy so many things in order to pursue your studies, as for example like fee, and also as to buy essentials for you to live in the dorm, and there's just so many things. But little did you know, one of the reasons why they cannot go to pursue their studies because of obviously the economy growth, I would say because they did not have any students allowances. They did not receive any kind of helping aids from the authority and government as well, because during this time in 2021 we received, as students, I don't think that we have received a lot of aids from the government. As for example, here in Mara institution, from Mara Professional College, I have received allowances every month. But back then there was no such thing as students allowances, you know. And also here today's world, we also received PTN. It is a loan that for students can actually have in order for them to have the ability to study in the future for a high institution. I would say the differences between 80s and 70s era in now in 2021 is completely different in terms of life chances, because girls back then, they did not have enough opportunity to work in a sector like engineering, because people always have this kind of stigma that they cannot work in that kind of area and job occupation. But now I can literally see the changes there, because I can see on Instagram and Twitter that people are being open-minded, and there are also girls that can be a pilot, and that is just really amazing to see, because back then we cannot it was really hard and difficult sometimes to actually see a girl become a pilot, but now it is completely something that you can achieve. The next concept is poverty line. When it comes to poverty line, it is related with minimum wage and also living cost. When it comes to minimum wage and living cost, of course, is going to be a huge gap between 1980s and also 2021. Okay, so speaking of the minimum wage, back then the interviewee told me that her first wage in 1985 was 185 ringgit, and in 2021 the minimum wage is 1,300. That is completely, there's like a huge gap between 100 and 1,000, right? So I would say, considering the minimum wage back then and now, I would say one of the factors that could lead to have the kind of minimum wage, or because of the living cost. Because back then I just remember that the interviewer told me that the snack costs around 30 cents, 5 cents, and it was kind of cheap, right? For me, it's quite cheap because I've never lived in the era. But my mom told me that during that time, 30 cents is quite pricey. But now, I would say, like, if you want to buy a snack or even a candy like sugus, it costs around like what, 1 ringgit or 80 cents. I would say you can literally see the difference between the minimum wage and also the living costs. Because I just remember that KFC menu also costs around 10 ringgit, but there's like Coke and also burger. It is the exact same menu. It's just that the cost is totally different if I compare it between 1980s and also 2021. Maybe because of the factors of economic growth and also the inflation that we have been facing for over the years now. And last but not least, the concept that I want to touch is prestige. And when it comes to prestige, it's all about the amount of respect and admiration that an occupation holds in a society. So when it comes to this, I would say the things that are quite common relating to prestige is teacher and also doctors, because we've always had this perception that they are genius and we gotta respect them, because as for teacher, they educate the younger generation, and for the doctors, they help people to save their lives. Back then, a lot of people actually respect the job of teacher, because they always feel like teacher has always been a role model for the students and also for their kids to be a good human in the future. And I would say that is really good to know that. But the thing is that it's kind of works different now in 2021, because there are a lot of issues that has been happening that are related with a teacher. As for example, we have a current issue that is related with Ain. Ain is a student. She basically spoke up about the jokes that has been made by the teacher in front of the whole class. The teacher basically made sexual harassment jokes.
I was making a couple of jokes, but it seemed normal at first. But slowly the jokes were getting weirder and more lucha. And then we were talking about how there's a lot of laws protecting minors from sexual abuse or sexual harassment. And then he said, guess what? Kalau nanti korang nak rogol, janganlah rogol yang bawah 18. Korang rogol yang atas 18. He really said that. And the girls were like quiet. But the boys, they were laughing. Like, it was so funny to joke about raping someone. He even talked about how that apparently kalau boys kena rape, it doesn't get reported because the boys is apparently sedap or it feels good for them. Like, what kind of... So much more that I want to say, but time is running out.
It was something that should never be happened in the first place because it was a rape joke, and when it comes to rape, it's a very sensitive topic and should never be talked in a form of jokes because it's a violence and it's quite a sensitive topic. And you know, considering that he is a teacher, he basically cannot do that in front of the whole class, especially to the youngsters. And I do think that kind of thing is one of the factors, one of the main reasons why me as a millennial and also other people in this world in 2021 do not have the kind of respect that people used to have back then. I mean, the amount of admiration and also respect towards the teachers are also getting lesser now because of the issues that has been lingering for over the years. And yeah, I do think the differences for the prestige is that how people see the teachers back then was completely like they're very good and they must be a very good person, that's why they can become a teacher. But now it's like because of so many issues that has been happening that related with teachers, and most of them are bad behavior issues, I would say the amount of respect and admiration just getting lesser. And with that, it wraps up my social stratification concepts comparisons between 1980s and 70s and 2021. And I really hope that this would help you to have a better picture of social stratification concepts. And yeah, thank you so much for your attention, and bye.